98 Not Out, sponsored by Shepherd Neame, proud supporters of cricket in Essex.
Okay, so as I was saying just before we played that record, that was Half Man, Half Biscuit, and that was Ode to Joyce. That was chosen by our next guest, which is the Sky News business editor, Ian King. And if you watch Sky News every day, you will... Oh, there's some noise here. What's that noise?
I don't know. Ian, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. How are you doing?
All right. So,
yeah, not bad.
So Ian that presents, is it 3 times a day you're live on Sky News?
It's yes, we go out. Well, it's just changed actually. The schedule has just changed. We used to go out at 9:30 in the morning and at 1:30 in the afternoon for half an hour, and it's just changed to an hour-long format at 10 o'clock every day.
And you are sandwiched between two of the, I'll say heavyweight in the nicest possible way, names on Sky News. So you have Kay Burley from 7 till 10, and then All Out Politics with Adam Bolton follows you straight after. So. You've got to be on your toes. Yeah.
No, two big names. I mean, the two absolute longest-serving presenters on Sky News. Actually, they were both there when the channel launched back in 1989.
Oh God! And you and I were still at school in those days as well.
I wish.
So, thank you very much for joining us, and we're very pleased to have you along. Now, what I wanted to talk about, obviously, you are the business editor at Sky, but I gather from seeing your footage of your working from home broadcasting and spotting the Wisdens on your bookshelf that you are an avid cricket fan. So I thought it would be a good chance to get you on and discuss the relationship between the game of cricket and the City of London.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been working at home until today, actually. This is my punishment from the government for daring to spend my holiday pounds in Mallorca rather than in Margate. Had this ridiculous quarantine period for a fortnight, so I was stuck at home. So, yeah, it was nice to sort of sit in mid-library, as it were. It's my living room, actually.
It's quite interesting watching... various people. I don't know if there's an instruction worldwide that if you are broadcasting from home, you have to be sat in front of a bookshelf, and then it kind of gives people open season to sort of dissect what books there are. Well,
there's a bit of that. I mean, it also actually helps dull the sound. You know, if you're sitting in a really echoey room with absolutely no soft furnishings or anything like that, then it can leave your voice a bit echoey. But if you've got a few books there, it does actually make the sound a bit less harsh. So there is a bit of logic behind it as well.
A few scatter cushions, maybe a throw over the sofa.
That sort of thing, yeah.
So let's talk cricket, and let's start at Lord's. Now, every year the Lord's Test is a big occasion in normal conditions, obviously. And from my experience, the Friday at the Lord's Test is pretty much like a networking event for the City of London.
It really is. I mean, the thing about the Lord's Test is it's marvellous. I mean, if you to be honest, I'm happy going whatever day. I mean, even if it's sort of last knockings on a Monday afternoon, I'd be delighted to be there. But you're right. Certainly Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you can go along there, and if you just sort of stand in one spot for 5 minutes, you're bound to run into someone you know. I mean, it is, as you say, everyone from the city goes there. A lot of people from the city do, and it's actually true also when you go to Surrey as well, to the Oval, to the Test there, and actually wherever you go, really. I mean, I've been to Test matches. I've been to England Test matches at most of the big Test grounds. I mean, funnily enough, I went a few years ago. I went to see the England-South Africa Test up at Trent Bridge with a couple of mates of mine who support Notts, and sort of said, "Oh, come on, Kingy, come up and have a day out at Trent Bridge." And these guys both grew up in Nottinghamshire, and expected to run into loads of their mates there. And I think practically at the first sort of rain break, because it did rain, I sort of wandered out and immediately ran into a pal from the city. And my mates hadn't seen any of their local friends from Notts, so the city boys travel far and wide to go and watch their cricket for sure.
It's a bit like rugby, I suppose. Is it? Where do you think this sort of started from, or has it always been the case? Is it kind of everyone went to school together or played at school, or is there a business link? Where do you think it's come from?
Yeah, I mean, there probably is an element of that, isn't there? I mean, if you take since you mentioned Lords, I mean, if you take the MCC, then there's obviously a very close tie there between the city. Right down, if you look at the MCC ties, I mean, everyone always associates it with the traditional old egg and bacon, but there is also another tie which is specifically called the MCC City tie, which is what members wear. No one in the city wears a tie these days, unfortunately. I think I'm one of the few people.
Sky News do.
Who still does, yeah. But, it's actually called the MCC City tie, so there's always been that sort of close connection, I guess. I suppose it was from school days for some, but, I mean, the thing is, I think people shouldn't talk about cricket as just being a game that's exclusively for public schools. I mean, I grew up in the West Country where cricket, of course, as it is in sort of Yorkshire, Lancashire, parts like that, it's very much a working man's game as well. So I'd be wary of drawing the sort of elitism too much. But as you know very well, the city is a very egalitarian place anyway, traditionally, where, bright working class kids had just as much of a chance of getting on as did someone who'd been to sort of Eton or Harrow and gone through the Guards.
Ian, obviously there's going to be financial pressure on the city and cricket going forward. Did you see the city guys still being involved with cricket as heavily, or will probably some investments not go forward now?
Yeah, I mean, look, as long as people have got money in their pockets and leisure time that they wish to fill, then you're going to get people, I think, going to all the big sort of blue-ribboned cricketing events. And I mean, funnily enough, I was at a Chance to Shine dinner. I'm sure you both know Chance to Shine, fantastic charity. I was at a Chance to Shine dinner at Lord's last year, and took the opportunity when I was sat next to someone from the ECB to sort of berate them about the 100 and say, look, why are you doing this? Why you need to reinvent the game in this way? It's perfectly good on its own. And he said to me, I better not name names, but it was someone quite senior at the ECB, and he said, look, have you been to a T20 at Lord's? And I said, yeah, went to nearly all of them this season. And he said, well, it's just a sort of city lads night out and everyone gets tanked up. And I said, that may be your impression of how it is at Lord's, and certainly it's probably a bit like that at the Oval, but you go to some of the other county grounds and it's definitely not like that. If you go to, say, Somerset, the county ground down there, and watch the sort of people that were going to T20s there, it's a night out for all the family. So I don't think it's the T20s were necessary sort of lads like that, but I'm sort of slightly digressing. I mean, clearly the game is under financial pressure. I mean, that was why it was so important for England to fulfil all the international programme that they set out to do. And obviously we've just got the Australian T20s and ODIs to come now. But that was very important for the England and Wales Cricket Board to fulfil the programme obligations this year, certainly their obligations to the broadcasters. Very, very crucial indeed. For the counties, it's really quite serious. Obviously, there's been a very, very sharp shortfall in their income this season. I think I'd probably be more concerned for the individual counties than I would be for the ECB and the England setup as such, because I think they will always get money coming in. But I was quite heartened. There's a very good article in the Times today by Mike Allerton about Northants, pointing out that they're probably one of the smaller counties, one of the least successful counties, and their finances have been put on a very good footing in recent years. So by sort of good stewardship and prudent stewardship, it's possible for the counties to get by as well.
Just trying to explore that point a little bit, because I kind of feel that your friend was, or the ECB originally have made a rod for their own backs, because if you put on Middlesex versus Surrey at Lord's on a Thursday night, which is typically the city night out, you are deliberately doing that to attract the city clientele. And if, sort of taking his point further, if he wants to get away from that, and the ECB want to attract this kind of family-friendly audience, surely they should be putting games on, not on Thursday nights, not on Friday nights, but maybe Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons, to get families to come along. Because, if you've got kids, a journey up to London isn't always a practical thing to do on an evening, is it?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But I mean, there's always been this issue of the sort of, you mentioned the relationship between the sport and money. I mean, if you look back to the interviews, I mean, Ian Botham always used to hate playing at Lord's, didn't he? I mean, dating back to when he he lost his job as England captain during the '81 Ashes series and sort of walked off to complete silence through the long room and through the pavilion, and he always despised the membership thereafter. But I remember reading a newspaper column by him, I think it was in the Mirror, and he actually said, well, look, they have to play two tests at Lord's each year because it brings in the money. And actually, if you look at attendances elsewhere, I mean, that was why Old Trafford was dropped for a while as an England Test venue, because they couldn't sell out in the way that, say, Edgbaston, Trent Bridge, Lord's and the Oval always do, come rain or shine.
You also get, there was that famous tussle a few years ago at Lord's over sponsorship, where Deutsche Bank were a main sponsor and had their name emblazoned all over the stands and everything, and then JP Morgan came along and put their name on the media centre, which created a huge uproar between those two great institutions, and the monies that were being bandied about to sort of secure the rights for them to put their names there was mind-boggling. And I sort of think that, again, when we talk about the state of finances at counties, whatever else, now whether it's the city in London or whether it's bigger companies that are more locally or regionally based, it still comes down to this need for corporate sponsorship to fill the corporate hospitality boxes, and I think that still seems to be, rightly or wrongly, where counties seem to still be focused on where their attention...
but look, never underestimate the personal element in this. I mean, you mentioned the Deutsche Bank sponsorship. Well, don't forget that Deutsche Bank's chief executive in those days was Anshu Jain, who was an absolute cricket fanatic. Think back to NatWest and all of their sponsorship. I mean, the NatWest Media Centre, NatWest, one of the reasons they were such a big sponsor was because, I mean, and we're going back quite a while now, I mean, the Media Centre went up in, 1998, 99, and of course the NatWest, then the chairman was Bob Alexander and the chief executive was Derek Wanless, and they were both absolute cricket nuts. And I remember actually going to the NatWest Media Centre shortly after it had opened with Derek Wanless. I was there on a sort of hospitality day out with NatWest, and he said, do you want to see the Media Centre, boys? We said, yeah, we'd love to, and we all piled up there, and Derek Wanless was very proudly showing us around, and all these sort of crusty old cricket journalists were sort of hissing at us and shushing us and telling us to be quiet. I actually turned around to one of them and I said, do you know this bloke, it's his money, it's his bank's money that's built this thing, so let him have a chat if he wants to.
Bringing that right up to date, I'm going to ask you something, or for your opinion on something, but the current state of cricket and lockdown and all the rest of it, and Lord's is heavily reliant on big test matches and an income from all of those. And we've seen the MCC take a rather controversial scheme and offer it out that if your wallet is big enough, you can be fast-tracked to having a life membership of MCC. Now, traditionally, MCC is a very, very exclusive club to join, and the barriers to entry are quite big. You have to jump through a lot of big hoops and pass various tests and interviews just to even get considered. What do you think about someone that turns up with a checkbook and Lord's opens the doors, and all of a sudden you can wear the egg and bacon tie or the city tie, and it's yours for life, my friend? How do you think that sits with others that have not gone down that route?
I felt personally. I mean, I'm an associate at MCC, so I don't have a vote on this. But I think had I had a full vote, I would have voted against it, because I think the beauty of it is that, as you say, it's a very, very difficult thing to get. You either have to have been a playing member and gone out of your way to represent the club, playing for the club, and the hurdles to get in that way are far higher than they used to be, or you have to just join the waiting list and queue up. I mean, I think I'll be in my 60s when it eventually comes my way, and I should be delighted that I fully intend to spend as much time as possible there when I've got it, if I ever manage to retire. And so, yeah, it did great with me slightly. But I think more to the point, there is a certain sort of class of, or certain type of MCC member, I think, who will probably look down their nose at someone who's paid a lot of money to jump the queue. I think there are certain sort of folk at the MCC who would, a lot of the older members would probably regard it as quite vulgar. But, it's the way of the world these days, and they're building these fantastic new stands either side of the media centre, and they do need the money. So, we shouldn't, I suppose we shouldn't grumble too much about it.
We mentioned your Wisden collection. How many have you got? Are you missing many?
Oh no, I've only just got a handful there. The one that I had behind me I had last year, or the year before last, I think it was. Maybe even it was the year before that. I mean, I've got the Wisden Anthology, which was a 40th birthday present from a very good friend of mine. So, which is just a wonderful, wonderful book that you can just dip in and out of endlessly. So I've got a few of the older ones as well from the sort of early 2000s as well that I've just picked up on my travels. But I quite like cricket biographies. I mean, I think Mike Atherton's, a lot of them are ghost written, of course. I mean, Mike Atherton's is a superlative read, as you would expect from Mike Atherton's writing. Richie Benno's autobiography had that was quite an interesting read. Jack Russell's autobiography, which is called Barking, and he wrote that with in association with Pat Murphy, the BBC journalist, and that's an absolutely rollicking read. So I do quite like these books.
Have you read Marcus Trescothick's book?
No, I haven't. I mean, I'd absolutely love to. I must admit that's one I've been meaning to get around to for a while.
Can highly recommend that one. Really good book.
We had Jack Russell on the show a couple of weeks back, and we explored this eccentric strain to his character. And I think after talking with him, we agreed that he's not a man. He's not an eccentric. He's just a man of extreme habits. I think that's what we agreed at him in the end.
Well, I mean, Jack Russell's an absolute hero of mine. I mean, he's as you say, he's all the stories about him sort of going into the sauna fully kitted up and all the rest of it. I mean, there is a certain sort of logic behind it. Who's to say that he's not right? And but everyone talks in professional sport these days about incremental gains, and you're not going to reinvent the wheel overnight or suddenly turn around and become twice the player that you were. And for him, these little incremental gains, making sure that he's got his food and drink just so, and his kit just so. I mean, I think that's perfectly rational. I think he was probably quite harshly treated at the time by, I think it was when Lord McLaurin was in charge at the old Teston County Cricket Board, as it was.
That's right, yeah.
There was the issue with his hat, wasn't there?
Oh, yeah.
He wore it under the England hat in the end, in protest.
Right, Ian, before you go, and I know you're very, very busy, have you got a broadcast again this evening, have you? No,
fingers crossed, I'm done for the day, but you never say never. The old home presentation kit's still stacked up here, so, if something mad was to happen with the Federal Reserve or whatever, and I'd be poised to leap into action.
Well, markets were tumbling last time I looked, so maybe the phone will go and you may be required to give some kind of comment. It's all the American tech firms, you see, it's all about them. When it goes up or when it comes down, blame them. But in just doing a bit of research ahead of this, I kind of felt a cold shiver run down my spine because later on we've got Jonathan Trott coming on the show. He's a Tottenham fan. Brett Sanders, sitting opposite me, is a Tottenham fan. And I note that you live in North London, so please tell me you are not a Tottenham fan.
No. No. Bristol City is my team.
The Robins.
Although it is slightly perverse. I mean, you can blame my father takes the blame for this. So my dad came from North Bristol, which is Gloucestershire territory. So he supported Gloucestershire, but yet he also supported Bristol City, which was the team from south of the river. Whereas logically speaking, if you support Bristol City, you tend to support Somerset, and if you support the Rovers, you tend to support Gloucester, and never the twain shall meet. So my dad, I support Bristol City, and I tend to sort of veer for Gloucestershire. I grew up near Somerset, and that was the team I sort of watched more in my youth. And actually, bizarrely, I was at school for one of my classmates at school for a couple of years was Mark Overton, who is the dad of Jamie and Craig Overton. So, I bit of a soft spot for for Somerset as well, which is, I know, completely not the done thing at all.
No, we don't mind.
Ian, many thanks for agreeing to come on the show and chat to us. You've been fascinating and good entertainment as well. And we look forward to catching you every day. Tell us again what time you're on Sky.
10 o'clock in the morning, Monday to Friday, and it's always available on catch up.
There you go. Always an excellent show, very informative. Even if you don't really know too much about what's going on in the city, watch Ian's show, and it's all explained beautifully. And a respite from Kay Burley and Adam Bolton. All right, then. Well, listen, take care. Go well.
Thanks, fellas. It's a pleasure. Good to talk to you both.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thanks
Cheers.
a lot.
Bye.
Bye now.